Everyone, how are you doing? Got a got a little problem tonight. My partner has emailed me a little while ago saying that he's sick and not feeling good. Hasn't been able to get much sleep, so I'm gonna be running this off here alone for a while until I get some of the other people that invited up here to come on up. So, who all do we have in here tonight? It looks like we got just a couple here. It says, yeah, so we got Michael 58 here. And that's it so far, I think. Well, so this is kind of an awkward one for what's going on here right now. This is probably going to be the slowest start off here. I got 5 watching now. Hey, Howie. Hey, Kildare. All right, getting a few more in here. So yeah, we'll be get a few more in here and we'll start rolling it on. In the meantime, everyone, check your weather forecast and tell me what your weather is out there. All right, let me refresh mine. Okay. Right now it says it's 17 degrees outside. The low tonight is supposed to be 9 degrees. And we have a 30% chance of snow tonight with a 50% chance tomorrow. Yeah, Kildare, it's going to be a slow start. Dave is from Southern Ohio prepping is sick or feeling under the weather. He's said, been having a tough time the last couple of days. So he's told him, hey, go ahead, take it off. We can play around here. Snow in Oklahoma tonight. Yeah. Looks like it's everyone's supposed to be getting a little bit of snow around. Hey, Mama Z, welcome in. So while we're getting some other stuff setting up here, DMAC. Yeah, DMAC, if you want to come on up, sure, I could use the help. Dave's sick tonight. And I know you got some experience and stuff. 62 and rainy where Dan's at. Alrighty. Kildare says it's 31, feels like 20. Well, I've been in the winters up there in by San Francisco where it says it's 40 and it feels like -10 because that stupid fog coming over the hill there. It's just so friggin' cold. It just cuts through you like a knife. So tonight we're going to be talking about tie down straps, ropes, bungees, stuff to secure stuff down, whether it's on a vehicle or on a backpack or whatever else we need to secure it to. And so I know there are a lot of people have a lot of ways of securing stuff. So, feel free to fire stuff in. Hey, fire squad. Okay, so it's 72 down there, Texas way. I could use a little of that 72 up here for a day or two. Finish melting off a bunch of the snow and get where I can work around the place here. So, probably the most common way of tying stuff down or securing it is with rope. Where'd I put it? Put it over here. And everybody knows how to tie knots, right? Hang on, here we go. Hey, Dan.
Howdy, howdy.
Hey, how you doing?
And I'm still breathing, so I can't complain, right?
Yeah. So a bunch of the ways, everyone usually use, to secure stuff down, tie it down with rope or string, twine, cord, whatever. Um, Probably the most, and everyone thinks they know how to tie knots until you ask them, what's a sheep bend? What's a bowline? What's a,
I love knots, man. Like it's so knots are like very much my thing. I've been a rock climber, caver for my whole life, so got a
perfect.
pretty good understanding of knots. But exactly, it is so funny to talk to people about like, what's a sheep bend? That's what you use to connect two ropes together that are different sizes.
Yeah. And that's not to get confused with a sheet bend. And whatever, a lot of knots have to have the word bend in them or whatever. Like that's because they're referring to when the rope twists around and stuff. So twisting a rope or turning the rope is called a bend. But there's all sorts of interesting things. Having been a scoutmaster, guess what I did a lot of?
You do a lot.
Oh, I see toys.
Yeah, I'm getting that. I'm trying to see if I have any rope in here, but I'm just digging through my climbing pack real quick.
Yeah.
If not,
The
oh yeah,
living garden.
that's how
Hey,
I
how you
started my
doing?
YouTube. This is how I started my YouTube videos with climbing stuff. So, oh, I don't have any ropes
But
in this bag.
let me pull up. Where is it? Okay. Probably the most common resource for people to learn how to tie knots. Let me see if I can throw this up here. Is this book here by the Boy Scouts? Knots and how to tie them at $1.50 or $1.49. Hey, you can't go wrong with it. It is absolutely one of the greatest books around for the price on learning how to tie knots. The one of the things I found that they carried at the scout shop in my local area was this little nifty thing here that folds out and folds out. Back up here, and it's got all sorts of knots on both sides. And what I really liked about it was this section: how to tie a necktie. It's a knot.
Random. So growing up, going to church every week, I've been tying my own necktie since I was a way little tiny kid. Served a mission, Mormon mission, so I wore a necktie every day for 2 years, type of thing. I was talking to one of my buddies that's in the Army National Guard, and he said that they had to, when they were doing something or other where they had to put their formals on. He said he was stuck in a room for like 25 minutes and he tied probably 25 to 30 guys ties because none of them knew how to standard God, I can't even think of the Windsor
Windsor.
knot. They couldn't tie a Windsor. Yeah, they couldn't tie a Windsor knot or even like a half Windsor or anything. They couldn't even do a poor version of a Windsor. So
Yeah, or the small
the
knot or
double
the
double. I
double
like the
knot.
double. Yeah, I do the
Yeah,
double Windsor. I
I
like really
mean,
big fat knots on my ties, but
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's there are a boatload of different knots you can tie for securing stuff. Um, Probably if anybody doesn't know all the knots and wants to learn about a bunch of knots, your blue healer. No, no, no. No, 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 no. The problem with the clip-on ties, that little metal clip in the back, pulls in your throat, and you wind up choking on that little pokey thing from the clip-on ties. Yeah, my
well,
parents
they
used to
look like
give us
garbage.
clip-on ties as kids, and I hated it. So I had to learn to tie a real tie, so I wouldn't have to wear that stupid clip-on tie anymore. Yeah. So there is.
So what are some of your preferred knots? What, like, when you go to tie knots, what are the one, like, because everybody has like if you're a knot guy anyways, if you know how to
Mhm.
tie knots, you have like particular knots that are like your go-to, like you always use them, no matter, like if it's for rigging this or if it's for tying down that or if it's for securing that. What are some of your go-to knots?
I'd probably say, basically the basic Boy Scout knots. Let me throw up a little PDF I got here on the side so you see it. Of course, your square knot. I mean, your square knot's absolutely fabulous. And
Sure.
then the Bowline, the king of knots, you know, and that
Everybody in the forum, everyone on the panel, everybody. When I say everybody, I mean everybody should know how to tie a bowline knot. They
yeah,
should be able to tie it multiple ways because it is. I love the bowline knot because
yeah,
it's a quick and easy knot. It's easy to untie after it's had like weight bearing on it.
yeah,
That is it's I actually like the bowline on a bite is like one of my favorite knots.
yeah.
Um, gives you the
So
double
one of my
loop.
favorite things to do is, like I'm looking at you, I'm not looking down at my hands. And so what I'm doing right now, I just tied a bowline.
Sure.
Yeah, so I made sure that all my scouts could tie the square knot without looking at it, and not just in front of them, but behind their back, a bowline, and then the clove hitch.
Yep.
Because if they're lashing something together, sticks or something, it's dark. They need to know how to start off with that clove hitch to start off their
Sure.
latching.
I remember one year at scout camp, we had a big, it was small, but there was like a oak tree that's probably like 100 years old, big freaking oak tree. And they had like a big tug of war size rope. And you couldn't get, like, you had to stay at least 20 feet away from the tree. There was like a perimeter around the tree, but
Yeah,
like you had to figure out how to like tie a clove hitch around the tree being 20 feet away from it type of thing. So it was like, but you only had like so much rope. So it was kind of tricky, but got kind of fun. So
oh, Hardneck Farm. Hey, oh, just stop in to say hi. All right, glad you stopped in. You have a good night too. Howie says the double fisherman's knot is his favorite. And yeah, one of the interesting things is the sheet bend I got up there on the screen over here. It has an interesting story behind it. That was probably the sailor's most used knot besides the square knot. Because originally the sails, which they call sheets, sailors sending 6 sheets to the wind or whatever. So a sheet is the sail. And how they would secure it, this one loop here, that's the end of the sheet. They take the sheet and they bend it around, and then they feed the rope through it to secure it. And then the one thing that doesn't show here, I'm not sure if I wanted to try to show it here. Let me pop that out for a second here. Get over. There we go. But so like you have your sheet bent around like this, and you run your other one up through it, and then around. If I can get it here to flex with this, you run it around and then through here. That's your sheet bend. Well, there was a different one that I learned from an old sailor. What they used to do is, instead of just running this through here, what they did is they doubled it back on it, get a little more slack here on it. And so basically what they wound up doing when it pulled down tight, there's your sheet bend, but this, instead of being coming out down here, is up here, so that in case a heavy wind, they got into a storm, especially like in hurricane season, and they needed to release the sheets, the wet sails, you just pull it and it lets go. And so that's one of the ones that that I learned that's not in any of the written down stuff. But I talked about, and I wound up going on talking about your sailors. Oh yeah, you have that one. And when it's like there's the sail ship, that. That's an emergency let go. Go back over here and get back this up. And so the, two half hitches, the taut line hitch, anyone that goes camping at all, these are your two.
Yes.
These are,
I tie taut lines all the freaking time. Like yes.
yeah. And so usually like, my boys, a lot of times once they learned how to do the taut line and the sheet bend, they put up tarps with the sheet bend on the tarp, and then put the taut line to the stake or to the tree or whatever they want to put up shade cloth. And so those are two ones perfect. Your standard overhand knot. Now this is the first time I've ever seen in a Boy Scout thing them showing the trucker's knot. My dad taught me the trucker's knot when I was 6 years old, and he spent hours making sure I could get it down right and I could do it blindfolded. But this is probably the best knot for cinching down a load on a truck or trailer. But you got to be careful with it. I've actually busted pallets because it'll cinch down so tight, and it just broke pallets. But
another knot that I use very regularly, that's, I'm sure it's more common now, but when I was younger it was a somewhat uncommon knot, but the alpine butterfly,
okay.
being able to add a loop in the middle of a rope, that's full weight rated on all ends, so you can clip into it. That's like what this guy right here. It's super easy to tie as well. You just make 2 loops, and then you cross them over and then tuck it through, and you've got a nice little got a nice little loop right there. I use this when I'm doing a lot of rigging as well, because I'll have this, I'll tie that in the middle of the line, and I'll run that through, and you can use it as like a mid rope pulley, kind of like, just to really get that extra cinch down right there. But I use alpine butterflies all the time.
Yeah. When my boys were in the scout troop, one of the few merit badges they took together was the climbing merit badge. And by the end of the week, I was one of the knots. They were going around camp on all the lines we had up for hanging our towels and swimming trunks on. They were tying that in the middle of all the ones and hanging pots and pans from those hooks and stuff like that. Hey, Stringfield Ridge, good to see you here. The one other thing I want to show everybody, let me go ahead and drop that PDF down so it's out of my way here. And if anybody's interested, if I find it here. Okay, so let me throw this back up for everybody. All right, so what I did is I Googled Boy Scout knot book, and one of the first things was at 6 Boy Scout knots. That was that PDF. It's at meritbadge.org, that PDF that I just showed you with those 6 basic knots on it. But the other thing I found out, which is this one here, I'm going to go to it right now. Was this one here, going to go up here to this one. Scouting magazine this scouting magazine is for the adult leaders to teach, and you don't have to be an adult leader to get it. We encouraged a lot of the parents of the scouts to sign up and get this magazine as well. But it goes through, this one here has links on on YouTube, links on how to tie all the different type knots. Yeah, so it's really good. You watch it being tied, all the different knots and stuff like that. And
Nice.
if anybody's interested, it's you can, it's called Scouting. It's the name of the magazine. They also have a lot of stuff online on it. Yeah, it's probably one of your best resources as an adult if you have kids and scouts, or And don't forget now, Scouts is co-ed, so there's going to be a lot of girls in there wanting to learn how to tie these knots. So, but yeah, and it's interesting is what most people don't realize. Another sailor's little trick on the square knot. Let me show you here. So I've got a square knot, and basically it's right over left, and then this left over right and under. So basically, when you have it, it looks something like that, and both your tails are on the same side. So that's a square knot. But sailors had a way of doing something when they thought someone might be getting, because basically they had their big duffel bags, and they usually wrapped the rope around twice and tied a square knot on it. Well, if they thought somebody was getting to their bags, they would tie what's called a thief knot. So basically, you have your loop like this, and instead of doing the right or left, they just take it, run it up through and around, and back underneath inside here. So it looks like a square knot, but your
tails are on different sides.
So. But it functions just like a square knot. And if they came back and they knew they had tied a thief's knot, and there's a square knot on there, they knew somebody had been into their stuff.
Sure.
And so that's one of the other little knot things. A gentleman, I can't do it here, but it's a really cool trick. Taught me this was you tie knots with your hands, not your eyes, because you can't always see when you're tying it. And basically, he taught me a little trick where you'd have a rope and you don't let go of the ends. You go up and over and hook around, but the rope's got to be longer to do this. And then when you're all done, you kind of snap it and you got a knot, and it just freaks everybody out because you still have the ends. It's a trick, and you do it. And the thing is that you can do it with your eyes closed. And that's the thing, is to get everyone to realize knot tying is not something you learn by looking. You may start it that way, but then you make sure you can do it with your eyes closed, behind your back, whatever. And yeah, it's really neat. So that one book I showed there at first, this one, and then this one here, you pick up. This is great because this is laminated, but it has all the knots we've ever talked about here and more. Every single type.
And I'm sure you taught your scouts it as well, but one of the things that we used to do we'd have competitions so you could do it the fastest, but you would like put the rope around yourself like such and tie your bowline from here where tuck it through, and then you got your little, you got your quick pull rescue knot right there. That's I have a lot of love for the bowline knot. Big fan of bowline knots, but
yeah, it's it's if you're doing any type of rescue work or something, and that's what we taught our scouts. You need to be able to do that, and you need to be able to do it one-handed. In case you have a broken arm, or you fell off a cliff or slid down the thing and you broke your arm, you got to be able to tie it one-handed so you can be rescued.
Yep. Another knot that I use a lot when I was doing search and rescue and climbing and caving and stuff like that was prusik knots, which is essentially like a triple, quadrupled over lark's head type of knot. You can use that as as really rudimentary ascenders to where you can climb a rope with them. But you can also they work really well for rigging as well. If you're doing like multiple line rigging, if you're dropping a safety line as well, if you need to cinch it up, you can tie a prusik around it so you can kind of like equalize load and stuff like that. So prusik knots are really important, I think.
Yeah. And anybody here is getting lost with the names of these knots and stuff. There are 2 merit badges in scouting where you need to learn a bunch of knots. You can download the workbooks for them. You can download the pamphlet for them. They are the climbing merit badge, and the Pioneer Merit Badge. Pioneer Merit Badge, you do a lot of lashings. That's tying boards and sticks and everything's together. And the climbing one, you learn all these other neat safety knots and everything else. But if you want to know where that stuff's at, let me throw this up here real quick. There's this website called the U.S. Scouting Service Project. U.S. Scouting Service Project. And on the page, you'll have a thing here where it's, you can choose different things. And you go to merit badges, and that's the page I'm on right now. But you just scroll down the side on the left-hand side. It lists first the required merit badges for Eagle Scout, and then lists all merit badges alphabetically. So you can see here, you got the climbing merit badge, and that's the pamphlet. And then the workbook has all this information on it here that you got to fill out and have your person sign off. So parents, if you got kids coming into scouting, this is important to know. And it talks about ropes, verbal signals, knots, figure 8 on a bite, figure 8 on a follow through, water knot, double fisherman's knot, safety knot. And these are besides the ones you have to learn to gain rank. To become a scout, a tenderfoot, second class, first class. You got a lot of knots you have to learn to tie. And then the other one is pioneering. Let's get down here to the P's. Up too far. Pioneering. I can just click on it there and it brings it up. Once again, it's got a pamphlet for it, and you can download down here for either Word format or PDF. Word format is great because then the kids can type in their answers so they don't have to print it out and trying to decipher their printing. But it talks all about the different type of lashings and stuff you got to do, and actually how to make rope too. Is one of the things. Hey, how to make a little rope machine? You got to make a little bit of rope in it, in twisted rope. So those are two merit badges that teach knots and the uses of knots and things to do with them. All right, Dan, what were you tying there?
This is my prusik knot right here. So there's you got your little, so let's see. So it slides, you can slide along the rope, but then when you pull on it, it just locks down onto the rope right there. So
yeah,
those are good knots to know. So
binds on itself.
Yep.
Cool.
It's funny how often I use knots, and I take for granted the fact that I just randomly know the knots. It's like, oh, I need to use this knot for that. Like, I remember this season when we bought our Christmas tree, threw it up on the top of the car, and the guy started to tie it down, and I was like, no, I'll get it, man. He started so I went over there and looked, and he was just doing overhand knots, like overhand and an overhand and an overhand, and I was like, no, man, that's a crap knot. Like, what do you mean? I was like, no, you gotta do it like this. I tied a quick little bowline, and then I backed it off with because I actually have let me tie it real quick. I'm sure that this is an actual knot. But this is one that I modified a bowline once, and this thing is it's a bowline on a coil.
Mm-hmm.
That's backed through itself. It's got a safety back through it. This is an indestructible knot that you could literally tow the car up the side of a mountain with if you had to. And then you can untie it. That's the beauty. That's why I like the bowline so much, because it can be untied after it's had a load on it. Whereas if you're using an overhand, a double, or a water knot, a double overhand, or a double figure 8, anything like that, you can very easily spend hours trying to untie those if they've been heavily weighted.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's and it also depends on the type of rope you have too.
Sure.
Some ropes just use.
So this is
yeah. Okay.
This is my backed up bowline on a coil that I use. So it's similar to a standard bowline, but you do a second loop instead of one. So you make a coil instead of just a loop. And then instead of having the tail going down, I then bring it back up through the top right there.
Right, I see that.
And that just, man, it makes it like, so you can see where I back it through the top of that right there to get the tail going up. And then if I had enough, you could then tie your overhand, like some sort of slide knot to keep it from backing out if it ever does. But knots are fun. Knots are important, man. You'd be surprised at how often you need, like, especially if you ever go camping, if you're ever out in the woods, it's really nice to be able to set up like a ridge line for a tarp and be able to get that tight. Like that's the thing about it is, like, a lot of people I see, they'll tie it to one end and then they just kind of tie it on the other side and just tie it up, and then it gets really droopy. Whereas if you put like your alpine butterfly a couple feet out and use that to like really cinch it down tight, man, you could pull down trees.
Oh yeah. Yeah, second half W. Okay. Now, interesting is a knot I didn't learn, and most scouts don't learn it unless they go through some special training. And there we go. And what's strange is that every scout, if they are in full uniform, has this knot on their uniform, and they don't know it. And this has become one of mine. Now, the original name of this knot is called a Turk's head knot. But because somebody thought that the Turks would be offended that they were using the Turk's head knot, they changed it to woggle. And I know a couple Turks, and they were pissed that the Boy Scouts changed the name of it. And they wrote letters and everything else, but they wouldn't change it back. So
That's the one on the neckerchief slide, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this is a Word doc that's out there. You start about 40 inches of cord, and you want to have it's paracord, but it's not the cheap flimsy stuff. This is the good stout stiff stuff like I have here. It's stiff. It holds out there. It doesn't just flop down. All right. And it shows you each step going through it, how to roll it around till you wind up with the Turk's head knot. Well, with this final one tucked underneath, it looks like there's no beginning and no end. Now, a lot of people wondering, what's the thing on that? If you look at the Turks started it, the Arabs adopted it on their headbands, how everything weaves around us. Yeah, that's a Turk's head knot. And that's, now it's that knot there. And if you can get a scout to tie that, and then to tie it, to learn to do it when they're not looking at it, just in their lap while they're doing stuff, they will develop a love of knots. Especially my youngest son, he went to on course for the National Youth Leadership Training, and they have to, each participant has to learn that knot. They have to tie their own woggles. We give them a special coated blah, 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 cord for them to use. And he wound up, because he was going to be teaching everybody how to do it, he sat in front of TV and tied something like 100 of these, watching a TV show. I'm watching, he's putting it together, and he tossed one off to the side. He was making extras for the scout troop. And he started tying them, and he got done, he started taking them apart and started retying them. It's like, dude, how many times have you done that? I don't know. All right, Howie, take care. Loved your comments in there. Everybody check out Howie's comments. Howie has great information at Food Forest Permaculture. If you haven't subscribed to Howie and you want to garden, check him out. Food Forest Permaculture. If you haven't
subscribed to Howie, you're under a rock or something, man. Like,
yeah,
he's got a good channel. Man, so random side topic, chat. Have you talked to Will at all? You know why he's in the hospital?
Will last night emailed me that he was having, I'm not sure how much I need to disclose here, but he was having some intestinal issues.
No fun.
And then he checked, so he said, if you guys want to go ahead and do the live tonight, well, last night, go ahead and do it. It's all right, I'll run it. And so we went ahead and did it last night. and he popped in for about a minute, and I haven't heard anything from him since.
Yeah, I just saw he just posted a picture like 20, 30 minutes ago on YouTube with him at a hospital, like hooked up to IV and breathing tubes and shit. And so hopefully he doesn't have any heavy complications or anything like that. So
Yeah. Did he posted on YouTube or Facebook?
it was on YouTube.
Huh? Because I didn't get that.
In the community tab section.
Community
So
tab. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. He hasn't. I wonder why he hasn't added me to his community tab. Oh, yeah. Probably just a slight oversight on his part, but yeah. Wow.
yeah, he was sitting in the hospital bed all laid up looking poorly. So hopefully it's not anything too severe, but
yeah,
tied a little monkey's fist right there for you guys. So
yeah,
didn't tighten it up, but
right. Yeah, those things, monkey fists are great for basically if you want to wait at the end and you want to get the rope up over something.
yep. That's I either do that if I'm feeling up for it, I'll tie that to throw my bear bags. If not, I just get a little stuff like my tent stake stuff sack and fill it with rocks and tie that to the end of the line and throw that over the branch. So
yeah, the one of the scouts took it upon himself to teach everybody else in the troop how to tie the monkey fist. I thought that was really cool. Yeah, there's tying knots and stuff is really good, but ropes and knot are not the only thing. And we will come back around to ropes and knots and stuff here, guys. But the other thing that I talked about on the thing was straps and bungees. Of course, everybody knows how to use a bungee cord. It's got two hooks on the end of it. You hook it, you stretch it. And the problem is with bungees is overstretching it. Hey, it's Brett of Broussard's Homestead. All righty. So I was hoping that Scott of Hidden Valley was going to be
no
in here.
blue healer. I didn't have a ball in this one, or a steel ball in this one, but I have tied them with steel balls in there before. They get really mean. So
yeah, the boys were learned to tie them with river rock, around river rocks in there,
yep.
So they can get a little extra weight on it. Hey, Tibor. But the bungees can be very deadly in using them if you overstretch them. And I've seen them break. I've seen good bungees break in really cold weather too. If it's out there and they've been outside and they've been frozen,
My problem with bungee cords is typically not so much the bungee part, but it's the hook on the end. I run into more problems with the hooks on the ends than anything else because they just use cheap, like coat hanger type material. It feels like half the time for those hooks, and that's my failure point usually. But I'm much more of a fan of ratchet straps versus bungee cords.
Yeah, we'll get into ratchet straps in a second. But I got a fun. It was funny to the rest of us. Back years ago, geez, I've been married 32 years, so about 33 years ago, I was working for a construction company, and one of the laborers there was not everybody's favorite laborer because he was acting around like he was
his poop didn't stink.
Yeah, basically, because he was the cousin of the owner's son.
Oh, so he could get away with murder.
He thought. Until a bunch of foremen started documenting all the stuff, he went to the owner and said, we don't need to fire him. We just need to haul his butt over the coals. And it was funny. The owner was do it, straighten him out. But anyways, they in construction, the company did underground construction and putting in sewer lines, water lines, storm drains. and we were putting in a big
Sure, sure,
drain,
sure.
a big storm drain that was 66-inch pipe. And they have what's called a shield. They dig a hole and they push the shield down the ground to keep the dirt from falling in. And they pull the shield along as they dig the trench, lay the pipe and everything.
Sure.
And anyways, he was down in the hole there, and they had 4-inch, 460-volt water pumps, submersible pumps. And
Some bad boy
basically
pumps.
they would, oh yeah, big bad boy pumps. They'd take the lower end with the backhoe, but it had either they'd have flexible blue discharge hose coming out, or we'd glue together some PVC and put a union down there and attach it to the pump. Well, he was strapping that PVC to the side of the shield, and he was using some cheap bungee cords. And the foreman told him, "Hey, no, you're supposed to use these." He saw these will work. He's stretching around, and it slipped out of his hand. And it worked around, slapped him about 3 times. And the last time it hooked his nose,
Smacked him in the face.
and it just tore the side of his nose like he had a ring in his nose. Someone ripped it out, and he was just screaming and yelling and everything else. And I mean, it was all we could do not to laugh, because he was being a jerk about it, to the foreman, saying, "Oh, this is right." It's like, and he was like, "You only use the stuff we buy. You don't use the crap out of your car." But yeah, bungee cords, some of them are, they're cheap. If all you're doing is something like holding a sleeping bag to the back of your backpack, quick, wrap it around, hook it on, and you just go. But if you have any sort of load, I mean, bungee cords scare me, because I've seen so many failures on them.
Sure.
Yeah. But of course, now I'm going to bring up my favorite store here. It's Harbor Freight.
Yay.
Now, the one thing I've had at Harbor Freight that has never failed, except when I misused it, are their 4-pack of straps.
Sure.
And the one time it did fail was when I was trying to pull out here. It was here up in Idaho when I was trying to pull out one of the irrigation gates, and I had it wrapped around it, and I had it hooked over to the top of the bucket, and had it hooked up, secured up to the bucket, and I curled the bucket too far. So the edge of the bucket, the strap went over the edge of the bucket, and I got about 30 feet before it cut right through it.
Yep.
So you can't run straps over sharp edges. But I've had probably 4 or 5 packs of those straps. I still have them. I've never had one fail on me. Other than that, I got one that's about to fail because when I had it on there, the load shifted and it started vibrating. I usually put a twist in it, to keep the wind vibration down, but everything shifted, and a section where the twist wasn't at now started vibrating from the wind, and it was rubbing on something, and it cut about halfway through. But that took a 12-hour trip from California to here to do that. That's all on the small ones. Now I got a couple of these big monsters, these 3,300-pound ones or the 800-pound ones. All the years I've had those, I've never had problems with those.
Yeah, I've got my fish. I've got like a really, really big ratchet strap. It's for slacklining. So I've got like a 130-foot, 3.5-inch, not quite 4 inches. It's like a 3.5-inch strap, and then the ratchet is freaking huge. But I swear you could probably like use that as like a come along almost, But
oh yeah, I can imagine. And if that's 3.5 inches, that's probably somewhere around along the line of like this one here shown here. Let me enlarge it. This is a 2-inch, and it's a 3,300 pound. So
mine's probably, I think it's like a 7,000-pound.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah, I was gonna say it'd probably be about that. Yeah. Yeah, those are just, yeah. you can do a lot with these things. If you have one of these big ones, and this ratchet, the size of this ratchet it's decent sized ratchet, and you start cranking on that, you can break whatever it is you're trying to tie down if you're not careful.
Sure.
And so one of the things I learned from one of the when we first started using this from our the low bed operator on our on the construction company was, you run these up, you hook it, and when you run it up, you want to put at least a half turn into it, going up the side, a half turn going across the top. Anytime it's touching over something and it's going from point A to point B over it, you want to have a turn in there, a half turn, and that keeps it from going and just tearing the snot out of it.
Keeps it from humming while you're driving. So
yeah, and the here, I mean, there's everyone gives Harbor Freight cheap crap, cheap crap. Their straps are actually pretty daggone good. Yeah.
There's random things that I'm actually pretty impressed with. Harbor Freight's one of those weird ones. Like half the stuff I go in there and you can look at it and you just know, like it's mostly like this, like a couple little hand tools and stuff. I'll see it and just be like, no way, that's not going to work. And sure enough, like we'll find one out in the garage broken somewhere from where someone else bought one. But I've had a couple of their power tools, and I've gotten a couple been pretty impressed with some of the stuff that they do, man. So I used their the snatch block pulley, their snatch blocks that they have. I've used those exclusively for years with great success with when I'm doing off-roading recovery and stuff like that.
Yeah. The a lot of their stuff that has anything to do with any sort of safety is going to be really good. But some of their stuff is just cheap, and but when I first started using them was back before I got married. Actually, before my dad died. He was a machinist, and at that time, the tools that they were importing from China were actually really good drill bits and stuff. They were actually better quality than the American Vermont drill bits. And I have a set. I got a set that I got from back then that I've had to replace 4 of the bits, because they broke because I was putting too much pressure on them. But the replacement bits I've gotten to replace it, like the American Vermont, I have to replace 3 or 4 times because I've had to resharpen them and stuff. These other ones, this old stuff was really good. And
I have a set of bits. I have a set of drill bits. They're from Harbor Freight, but they're the Cobalt. So Cobalt, the metal Cobalt, better than snot. Holy cow, they work really, really well at drilling through steel. They stay sharp I haven't had to resharpen any of mine. I've been using them for years on my, in a very poor fashion, I'll use my drill press as a rudimentary mill, so I can mill, and so I'll turn the speed up as high as I can and really get that, some of those bits going, and I can fabricate the metal that I need to fabricate with those, no problem.
We had they picked up a trailer specifically for hauling the shields and stuff on, a flatbed trailer, 40-footer.
Sure.
And they wanted us to put those D-ring tie down shackles on there, where they didn't want to use the welded ones. They wanted to use the bolted ones.
The bolt-on, the bolted. The Harbor Freight ones are good. They work. These are monster ones. These were beyond what Harbor Freight has, but we're talking about, they were the blocks were like this big, and the D-ring was bigger than my thumb going around. Big monster stuff. But to drill, at first they were one of the mechanics was just going to get welded on. The owner said, I want those bolted on, because if you weld it, you're going to screw with the tensile of the heat treatment of the steel around that area, and it's going to weaken it. So we went. They were trying to use their drill bits and going through, and it was just going through drill bits. And we went down and got the 1/2-inch Cobalt ones from Harbor Freight, right through, and
they were great, and
Yep.
went through there, and we were able to get it done. Okay, we're done enough talking Harbor Freight. But yeah, I
So
mean,
if you
it's
need good ratchet straps, go to Harbor Freight.
yeah, exactly.
Moral of the story. So
Yeah, exactly. Their safety stuff's great. Not bad either.
well, and
Is their
ratchet strap.
chains? Their chains aren't bad either. You can get you can get the
Sure.
3/8 20-foot chains for tow chains and stuff. I've been using that with the tractor here too, pulling stuff out of the ground with it, and nope, and I haven't had any of them break yet.
Well, there's something to be said about ratchet straps because I don't know if I have too many. I've got a lot of ratchet straps, like all different sizes. Some that have like the hard ratchets, some that are just like kind of the slip ratchets, like the little spring loaded push buttons.
Mm-hmm.
Super valuable, man. You do so much. Like, I mean, I did the alignment on my car with ratchet straps. Instead of like hooking it up to it, like I disconnected my track bars and I hooked up ratchet straps to the frame and I pulled the in line right, and just like random things you can do with ratchet straps.
Well, the interesting thing we do too is whenever we were popping the tires on the wheelbarrows out on the job site, we'd wrap a ratchet strap around it, ratchet it down, and pull the tire in, and it's push the bead out. And once the bead was out solid enough, we'd use some of the pipe soap on it to secure it, and then we just air it up again. And usually what happened is someone would be running along with a load, and they'd pop on the curb or something sideways, and it would just pop the bead off, and you would have to put the ratchet strap on it and blow it right back up again.
Yep. One of the random things that I've used ratchet straps before. Once I was up skiing, doing some backcountry skiing, and it was snowing hard. And it was, I was 4-wheel drive, lifted, snow tires, the whole go. And I didn't have I don't have chains for my big tires, but I got ratchet straps out and I put the hooks like up on the treads. And then I just tightened them down and I made like rudimentary tire chains out of ratchet straps, and they worked. It got me out of the snow.
Cool. Yeah, Jay. Ropes, straps, chains, no such thing as having too many. Well, the only time there's too many is when I had all the ones for my trailer in the back of my pickup truck in the back seat, because it filled the floor up even with the seat. And when we were going somewhere, my wife wanted to bring one of my boys along. It's like, okay, throw all those over on the other side, pile it up. But yeah, one of the things for ropes and stuff though, I'm going to go back here to Harbor Freight and throw this up here because of what Tibor said. The wrong one. This one. There we go. So they got some really good ropes here and stuff. There are different types of their ropes and stuff. They're polypropylene ones. Basically, it's like this one's like a huge paracord. It's got the layers inside, layers and layers and layers. If you cut it, you gotta have like a hot knife or a soldering iron to fuse the end of the rope good. But they got all sorts of good stuff, different types of rope and stuff. Yeah, they got their tow ropes and everything. This right here. Sorry, I'm going to get a little squirrel moment. Their pink construction line, it used to be always have like a wax coating on it. It was great when you needed to use it to whip the end of a rope that you've just cut, like the hemp rope.
Sure.
That was the best stuff ever, because it was as you whipped it and you pulled your final thing through with it, it had enough tension heat on it that the wax melted and refused instantly.
Yep.
And it didn't go. And I've never had any whipping I've done with that stuff come undone ever. And that's been 12 years I've been doing that. With that,
I use sinew, like the artificial sinew that I get from the leather shop to do all my whipping. So
But
same concept.
yeah,
So
teaching the Boy Scouts, this is cheap, $450 for 500 feet.
yep,
It's
yep.
cheap and it works great. Go back here. Yeah. So you got all sorts of different ropes and stuff. You got your hemp rope types, and then you got your polypropylene. You got your nylon ropes. Your polypropylene is a lot better than the nylon, I found. At least the nylon ropes I've always gotten, they're so friggin' slippery. You try to tie a knot and the knot just slides and undoes
Yeah.
itself.
I'm really particular. I'm really particular when it comes to ropes, but that's, being my climbing and caving search and rescue background, I spend up a little bit too much on my ropes. But the benefit of that is that, like, once I kill a rope from climbing, it's like that's a 60-foot long or 60-meter rope that I can now use for rigging, for towing cars, this, that, or whatever, because I change my ropes out every 3 or 4 years when I'm heavy climbing, just to there's
Yeah.
I like having a fresh safety line.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if there's any the rope starts to get any fray on it at all, it's done for climbing. You don't want to be up to a frayed rope at all. But yeah, so there's let me go over to just bring this other one up here. See if I can, let me enlarge this. Yeah, yeah. Your good hemp ropes and stuff. I used to love those all the time. I went dragging, kicking, and screaming into using synthetic ropes. I grew up around hemp ropes, and I could do about anything with them. But one of the problems with hemp rope was once it got wet, if it was in a knot and had a load put on it, try untying that knot.
Sure, yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I like using jute and hemp for all my lashings, especially like if I'm doing any sort of like bushcrafty or backcountry type of stuff.
Yeah.
Like if I'm making primitive shelters, I like, because you can leave it out there. It's totally organic. So it's, it'll biodegrade eventually.
Eventually 10, 12 years down the road.
Yeah.
But yeah. The interesting, what I found out to be the best rope for teaching people how to tie knots is the 5/8 or 3/4 inch rope that I got from Home Depot. The
That black braided nylon, pretty much. So.
Or black or the white side. It's called. They called it. Was it deck rope or basically? The name of it had something with ships.
Yeah.
Like and that stuff. It's soft. It's flexible. You can work with it, and it holds a knot. Expensive as all get out, but it holds a knot easy, and it's good to learn how to tie all these different knots.
Well, I think it's also important to recognize that there's different, like obviously there's several different types of rope and cordage, but realistically there's like, you have static and dynamic rope, and you need to understand the difference between a static and a dynamic rope and the different characteristics they have, because you're going to use different knots for those for the lines depending on if they stretch or if they don't stretch, because like my climbing rope, it's got like an elongation rate of like 12.8%. So meaning like if you fall, it's going to bungee out, an extra 12% for you to kind of take some of that sheer force off. Whereas like if I'm rappelling or doing any sort of rigging to do search and rescue, it's all static lines right there. You don't want the bounce. You want to have an elongation of 4% or less, 5% or less. So yeah, there's, and that even comes into like when I'm doing like off-road recoveries.
Mm-hmm.
Typically I'll use like a kinetic toe strap, something that's got a lot of like bounce to it. Because it's a lot more forgiving on the hard mounted, like on the bumpers and stuff like that. But then you also get a lot more force. Like it's almost, it's like pulling a cork out of a champagne bottle. But every once in a while I want to have a static line. If I'm not looking to rip something out and I just need to do a hard pull, you're going to want to have a static line or a chain or something like that. So
Yeah. Yeah, let's see. I mean, I'm just looking here. I remember hearing about static and dynamic on the ropes and stuff back when I was sitting in on my boys' climbing merit badge for a little bit. They were talking about that, but it's like, everything I've done has always been, I want, when I cinch it down, I want static strength on it for tying loads down and stuff with the.
When I see them, they're talking about Bankline right now in the side chat. Bankline is good stuff. That Tard, like because it's heavy duty, it's waterproof, and you can get like really long sections of it for pretty cheap.
So Bankline is actually a type of rope, or
it's not like I mean it's a rope, but it's more of a cord than a rope.
okay.
It's going to be like it's kind of like an oversized version of that pink construction line that you were showing.
Right. Okay.
Like a number 36 bank line is probably like an eighth of an inch at
Okay.
most in diameter.
Okay.
It's usually it's not like it's not wax, but it's like tarred
Mm-hmm.
almost. So it's not tacky. Um,
But it's not slick.
yeah, it's not slick and it's not tacky. It holds knots really well. It's waterproof and it's strong as all get out. Like it's got a really high tensile strength to it. So
Okay. Let me go ahead and do something here. Open another. See what it says. See how much that stuff costs. Yay. Bank line. Okay. Let me enlarge this a little bit because it's still. Oh, it says it's at 150. Enlarge just a little bit more here. There we go. Okay. Oh, okay. They say they got, I'm not sure that's actual bank line, but it's strong.
yeah, it's that black coiled stuff right here. There, that's bank line there.
So I think I've seen people using that for stitching on leather work and stuff.
It's similar to that. It's a little bit bigger. It's ideally designed for like setting up like multiple fishing lines, like or like so yeah.
Right. Okay, it says similar to tennis netting. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, bank line's a good one. That's good to have because you can buy a big roll that it's pretty heavy. Like I use that for lashing and as well as the jute, but I usually carry jute with me in my bushcraft kit, I guess you could call it. I don't know why I hate the term bushcrafting, but for some reason I hate the term bushcrafting because I think it's like the kitschy term, Like,
Yeah. Yeah, like we went from being a farmer to self-reliant to survivalist to prepper to yeah. Okay, Tibor says he makes nets using number 12 bank line. And that was number, what was that I showed up there? That was showing number
trot lines. That's the term I was looking for.
Yeah, 36 bank line, 1 pound roll. Yeah, okay. Cool. Internet, something else there. I'm always learning, and I just learned a bunch more just tonight, guys. This is cool. I'm gonna have to go back and watch this again. Make sure I get everything. Okay. Now talk about fall ropes back up here earlier when they started switching into it here. Tibor said 1 or 2 falls on your 9 fall rope. Time for a new fall rope.
Yeah, with climbing specific, like it depends on the fall. I typically, let's see. I like that, Jay. Stumbling around the woods trying to survive. Bushcrafting is an easier version of saying stumbling around the woods trying to survive. So.
Oh, My apologies to all the bushcrafters out there for laughing, but it's like Larry the Cable Guy says, I don't care who you are. That's funny.
For some reason, whenever I think of bushcrafting, I think of like somebody with like really bright flannel and a weird handlebar mustache, and I don't know.
Uh, yeah. Now, one other quick little change. We talked about chains and stuff. Anybody has a trailer to haul in a vehicle on the trailer? Depending on the vehicle, you can get by with some of those big, heavy-duty, 2-inch tie straps. But if you're hauling a tractor or a piece of equipment, I'm talking like a piece of equipment, I'm talking about construction equipment. Oh yeah, you need chains. You don't just need chains either. You need, our low bed operators used 3/8-inch chain, and not just any 3/8-inch chain. They had to get grade 70 or grade 80 chains and hooks, because the California Highway Patrol would fine them if they didn't have that, because it's a safety factor. You can get a 3/8 toe chain that is not grade 70. You put a binder on it and you cinch that binder down like you're trying to hold a D6 dozer on a flatbed, that chain's going to snap. The difference in the hooks, like a grade 70 hook to a regular, 3/8, hook you get in at Home Depot or Harbor Freight or whatever, it weighs at least twice as much. It's big, gnarly, and ugly, but they also don't break. And let me see if I can find it here.
Well, this is, like talking about straps, ropes, tie down, stuff like this. Maybe this is like maybe it's the Boy Scout in me. Maybe it's the search and rescue in me. Maybe it's this or whatever. But like, I think it's kind of important to have like 100-foot section of good rope in, like, if you're really doing like that, I'm gonna be the sheepdog prepared guy. I think it's really important to have like a climbing rope or something like that in your car, because how many times have you heard stories of cars running off of the road into the icy river, everybody standing on the bridge watching people slowly drown as their car is sinking?
Picking their noses and scratching their butts.
How easy would it be for me to, it obviously wouldn't be the most fun, but like, it wouldn't be hard for me to tie a rope to my bumper, put my harness on, jump in the water, and be able to help
Save
affect a proper rescue, help to actually affect a rescue, right there. I haven't had to do it yet, but God, I wouldn't want to be sitting there just like trying to put jumper cables together to try to wade out, into a river or anything like that. So I think it's important to, if you have the stuff, get it, or stage it. If you don't have it, it's not a bad idea to consider having something like that, to where you could actually, like, I keep a harness, and I partially because I like to stop and go climbing randomly regularly, but I keep a full climbing get up in my car there, just in case I ever needed a safety line of some sort, a rescue line of some sort.
Okay, let's pull this up here.
Yeah, see, Tibor, that's exactly, I think it's really important to be able to help with a water rescue if you need to help with a water rescue, man. Because that's something that even like when first responders show up, like when your EMS or when your fire team or anything like that shows up, they're going to be up Craps Creek without a paddle as well, because like, while they are prepared for that, not necessarily, depending on the department, they might not have, rig lines like that able to quickly rappel down a ravine, or rappel off of a bridge into a river, this, that, or whatever. Because you're gonna have to call in like high risk, like extraction teams, to be able to help with those rescues.
I'm just looking something up here real quick here. Let's see if this works. Bring that bad boy up. I'll show it here. Okay, I'm gonna throw up some picture here. All right. If you notice how much thicker and heavier these chains are than you would expect most chains to be, hooks to be. These are grade 80, and this one here, these are called grab hooks. At the weak point of the hook, they actually got extra material there. And on our grade 70 chains, we would put grade 80 grab hooks, because these things are so much stronger than this regular, in these other ones here. It's just, even though this is a grade 80, it's not quite as stout as this ugly monster. These ugly monsters are thick, heavy duty hooks. And if you need something, you could be hauling something heavy, or you got something really important that you're securing down. You don't want to use I hate to say it, you don't want to use a Harbor Freight chain or a Home Depot chain. You want to use something that has a good hook on it, because the hooks usually fail first. Then it comes to the others. You got your grade 70 transport chains, and this hook here looks, you hold this side by side with the others. There's a difference between them. They're a little bit the 80s are heavier than the 70s, which are a lot heavier than the 60s. And yeah. And then you have your binders. And you got your lever binders, your ratchet binders. And they come all different ways. Like this ratchet binder's in the middle, this one's off on the side. But your good chain, good binders. Oh yeah, it's it can make all the difference in the world. And a lot of them are going now to the ratchet load, because that way they don't have to go a full, half, 3/4 of an inch or an inch for the next chain link. They can just ratchet half a chain link really easy. Yeah. Okay.
I've never really done a whole lot with chains, but I've never really had to deal with tying down heavy machinery. So
yeah, I mean, it's like I made sure I kept my grade 70 transport chains when I came up here, because I bought a Coyote tractor with a backhoe on it.
well, sure, ripping out stumps or this, that, or whatever, I'm sure that makes all the difference in the world. So,
but also when I'm just transporting it, I don't use the regular 3/8 chains to transport it. I use my grade 70s, because hey, I don't want $25,000 going flying off my trailer.
Sure.
Long arm ratchets. No, Jay, you don't weld it to. You do not weld equipment to the trailer. Oh, you want to see somebody come totally unglued? You do that, and let the owner of the piece of equipment see that. Ooh.
So I see them. Jay's kind of joking about not tying off rope to one end when you're throwing a rescue line. I sadly have seen that happen before, where I remember.
Whoops.
I've actually seen somebody go rappelling where they didn't tie their rope off, and they didn't die, but that 100-foot fall with the sudden stop at the bottom really messed them up.
Yeah.
And that's when you want to take, I actually have a funny story. I remember one time I was out climbing with a couple buddies, and we were in the more like novice area of a wall, because I had some people that weren't really proficient at climbing. We were just kind of having a good time, whatever. And out on this wall was the the local sheriff's department. They were doing like caving and canyoneering to like rescue scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
And don't even get me started. I won't. I'll try to keep the story as short as possible. But they, of all the times that I've ever been out in a climbing area, these guys were the least professional that I've ever experienced in my life. They were so unsafe. They weren't willing to work with anyone else that was like climbing in the area. They were, they tried to section off the whole area, but they couldn't because it's public area, public land.
Right.
So we were climbing around them, kind of climbing with them. They were giving us all like a hard time when we were doing our rigging up at the top side there. And I can remember right before I left, like I decided that I wanted to, like we packed up early and we're leaving because of how the sheriff's department was acting there. And right as I was about to wrap down to the bottom, I pulled all my anchors. I started chewing them out. I looked at their sergeant, whoever it was that seemed to be in charge, and I just gave him an earful. And I said, you know what, you guys are in the red zone right now, and this is not a time to be macho or above yourself. We're all here to help each other and make sure that we're all here doing it safely and properly. And by the way, that rigging line is bad. That knot is bad. If you go out on that line, you're going to actually have to effect a real rescue. You might want to recheck your rigging before you send a guy over the edge right there. Like I called them out on their setup, and sure as shit, he looked at it and he was like, oh crap, they stopped their whole procedure and had to go retie their anchor lines and everything because they doing a really piss poor job at it. So like that right there instilled into my head that like, just because the person might claim to be professional doesn't mean that they actually know what they're doing. So if you're having to deal with any sort of a rope rescue scenario, it's a really good idea to kind of have a basic idea of what's being done so that you know that you're not going to be more of a problem and a hindrance where you can actually affect a rescue right there. So that's why it's really important to understand knots and what knots to use at what points, like anchoring knots, whether it's, there's so much to it, man. There really is. I don't know, man. It's like so second nature to me. I was a high-rise window washer that was my first real job, was high-rise window washing. And then I went straight to search and rescue out of that. And so it's always been a part of me right there. But so maybe I think I take some of my knowledge for granted that I've got just because it's been so first nature for so long for me. But
well, that's one of the things I wanted to point out here to you. It's all muscle memory. It's what you
absolutely.
Do. And when it comes to knots and stuff, that's one of the things a lot of people don't realize is that it's and that's what that teacher I had that told me you tie knots with your hands, not your eyes, so you build up muscle memory, and so that you can do it under any circumstances, and you're not worried about something else happening wrong, something else going wrong on you. And you can always tie a knot. And you can tie it without looking at it, and you don't have to worry about everything being absolutely perfect, because it's going to be perfect because you do it all the time, and you it's practice. That's
absolutely.
Yeah. So, and it's like doing certain things, you do it enough, the knots, square knot, tying your shoelace. How often do you stop to think how you're tying your shoelace now, guys? I don't think anybody stops to think, okay, it's right. I go over this, I make the little bunny ear, and the rabbit falls through the hole.
The funny thing about that, and maybe it's different for me, but like when I actually tie my shoes differently than majority of people do. Because like most people, like they do the loop and then so you make your loop and then you like loop around once and then you tuck the bunny ear through the hole right there.
Yeah.
If you actually look at the knot and study it, if you instead of looping it away from you, if you loop it towards you, it's a more secure knot and it's less likely to come untied. But it's always taught to loop it away from you real quick and then tuck it through. But if you actually loop it towards you, it makes it a more secure cinch.
Yeah.
Random things like that. So
yeah. So there's a lot of things that are when it comes to knots. I mean, that's that's one of the things we for the scouts are teaching them. That's why they're supposed to learn. First thing they learn a lot and practice a lot, square knot. Then the hitch. Then the taut line, and then the clovis. I mean, they learn those and do those time and time again, so that they have that skill of that knot down, so they're not stopping. Oh, how do I tie these two boards together? Well, you start with a clovis hitch, and you start going through it.
Yeah. Well, and that's it's like if I really had to think about like the necessary knots, I think that everybody should know. Square knot is definitely one. Bowline is definitely one.
Mm-hmm.
Taut line is another one. I think even like a timber hitch is a really good idea to understand, because then you can do like a rudimentary tourniquet, or you can easily, hitch around a log to pull it through the woods if you don't want to carry it, type of thing.
Yeah. And that's what a lot of scouts use that one for.
Yeah, I think the sheet bend is a good one as well, because that you can conjoin two ropes of different sizes together easily with that knot.
Yeah. And then the sheet bend on top of that one for putting up your tarps and making a quick shelter.
I think it's really important. Like, you need to know how to lash something to a pole or to a tree.
Mm-hmm.
You need to learn how to tie a safety rated loop knot, either around yourself or something that you can clip into a harness. You need to be able to join ropes together to lengthen ropes. You should also be able to do the sheep shank type of thing and shorten a rope if you need to shorten a rope.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's been times that the only time that I've ever actually used a sheep shank knot was when I was running a flag up a flagpole, and the flag that we had was smaller than the spacing for the clips.
Right.
And so I did a quick sheep shank right there in the middle, just to tighten up that line, so you didn't have a droopy line in between the two hooks.
Yeah.
Worked fine. But like, people were amazed that I was able to quickly shorten the rope up. I was like, come on, man, this is easy. So,
yeah. That's yeah. What since the last thing I showed on there with the chains and stuff, I just made a Turk's head knot. I've been talking here. Goes around and around.
As Tibor says, prusik knot's also a really good one to know, because you can climb ropes with prusiks, man. Like, that's an easy way to climb a rope if you don't know how to climb a rope. So
yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the other one Tibor did for a second. Now I've seen people do this, and it's something that when I see it, oh, that's a great idea. I got to remember to do that. If you're running some rope over something that has a chance to damage the rope, some of that hollow webbing is great.
Yep.
Slip it on there, and it protects your rope, protects your investment.
It's called tubular webbing, is actually the official name of the hollow webbing.
And so this knot here,
this stuff right here. So yeah, you just cut it open, and you can use it as like a kind of a rope protector right there. It works okay. I prefer taking like a carpet or something out with me if I have to run a rope over an edge, but.
Okay, so I'm looking up here to see what this is called. Okay, and so let me throw this up here real quick. Hey, there's some YouTube videos on how to tie the prusik knot. Yeah, good stuff there, guys.
It's an easy one. If you can do a lark's head, you can do a prusik knot, because a prusik knot is just like a lark's head with like 2 or 3 extra loops through it. So
yeah. And it looks like those guys are laying it out there nice and neat and showing you how to do it. So, yeah. Knots are great. I mean, it's amazing what you can do with some good knots.
Well, and you can like even once like if you get into like the weaving, like I know we've all done like the cobra knots and the random little things to make our paracord bracelets,
Yeah,
but I actually made a like I fashioned it the same. I did it the same way that they make climbing rope, like how they stitch the kern on the outside right here because it's a kern
right.
mantle rope. So I made that's all it is a crown knot essentially, just with multiple strands of a crown knot. But I did like a 6 strand crown knot, and I made like a rope out of paracord. You know, it's probably a 1/2 inch to a 5/8 rope. Um, I can guarantee that it is 10 times stronger than it was when it was just 550 cord strands right there. Um, but you know, you can do all sorts of stuff with it. You know, I mean, because it's the same. Like, rope is nothing. You can weave with rope just like you can with thread and with fibers. You know, to make your nets, to make hammocks, to make all the above. You can. There's a lot of stuff you can do with ropes. I made a paracord hammock out of. Yeah, I like rope. I like tying knots, man. Actually, one of those things that I do in traffic, like if I'm sitting in like heavy flow traffic where you're going like 2 or 3 miles an hour,
Yeah,
I uh, I have a couple little hanks of cord in my center console that I'll pull out and I'll start tying knots.
yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, I knew tonight was going to be a little short, anyways, because there's only we can't actually hold classes here and teach people how to tie knots. But the importance of I mean, they need to have, like I do, a 2-inch or a 48-inch monitor so they could actually see us teaching them how to tie knots. But
I like your
Jay,
style,
that was
Jay.
bad.
I like your style, Jay. Just got to make sure the ropes are soft so you don't get too much rope burn. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to get some of those sailing ropes that are nice and soft and everything. All right. Okay, so we got current.
Yeah, kern mantle. That's like a climbing rope is kern mantle rope.
Okay.
So how they designate it, what a kern mantle, I'm not going to cut one open right now, but kern mantle is like, so it's very similar to like a piece of paracord where you have your
Right.
core strands and then you have the sheath around the core strands.
Right.
That's what a kern mantle rope is, but it's going to be like typically they're either static or dynamic, but that's this stuff right here. Like this is a kern mantle rope. This is a 3/8 inch kern mantle rope. It's got a you could easily tow a car with it. You could easily pull a car up the side of a. I mean, if you had the right rigging, you could pull a small car up the side of a mountain with this type of rope right there, especially if you had enough block and tackles there. So.
Yeah. Yeah. It's once it's like T-board. That's a great thing. That's why my son still every now and then he'll get out and he'll still practice knots and stuff just because he needs to, especially with the guys he's working on. He works for a company where they go in after some water damage or fire damage and restoring the place, and they're tying the wiring stuff out of the way. And some of these guys are tying all these funky knots, and he's going nuts. And he's so he got out his knot book again and refreshed his memory so he wouldn't screw up in front of him. And he goes in and now he's teaching the guys at work how to tie the basic knots, and the bowline and the timberline, all the top lines and all those funny knots. Fun knots, not funny knots, fun knots. So they're not making the funny knots.
Yep.
Overhand. Yeah. But yeah, doing it, I learned it. I used to do it a whole bunch. I'm good for the rest of my life. No. It's like, you learned how to shoot. You don't have to go to the gun range again ever, do you? No, you need to. You have to practice shooting archery. Yeah, practice tying knots. It's something you just maintain your muscle memory, maintain your skill, and that's the way it's going to be. And Dan, I want to thank you very much for coming in here and help saving my butt tonight.
Oh, thanks for having me in. So,
Yeah.
well, it randomly, last thought is, physics obviously when it comes to rescues or rope work or anything like that, physics has a lot to do with it, because whenever you put a bend in a rope, you reduce the needed pulling power by like 50%. So every time it bends, you reduce it by 50% and 50%. So like that's why you have pulleys and block and tackles and stuff like that. Like
Oh,
I
yeah.
have like on the front of the Jeep, I've got a 9,000-pound winch, but if I put a snatch block on there, you can tow 18,000 pounds, type of thing, versus 9,000 pounds, because you're getting that much more force. If you put a second snatch block on there, you can really do some work with it. And it's the same thing with climbing, like that's, the whole concept behind like your ATCs or your figure eights is that, like, when you're rappelling or belaying or anything like that, it's those, you're relying on, like, because right here, like when you
Hey,
use like
gunslinger.
when you use like a belay plate or a belay, an ATC or something like that, you get like 3 bends in the rope right there, just at this one point. So you could be like 100 pounds and you could be belaying somebody that weighs 220, 230 pounds. And when they fall, they're not necessarily going to rip you out of your seat because of the physics behind it. So,
Yeah. Funny,
this was
Michael.
a naughty time. Hardy.
Yeah. So, so let me throw this. No, that's not it. Where was it here? This one. So, guys, one of the last things here I want to go back to what I showed earlier during the beginning is this is a PDF. You can download it, for free, simple. 6 Boy Scout knots, square knot bowline, sheet bend, clove hitch, 2 half hitches, top line hitch, overhand knot, and of course the trucker's knot. And if you look at all these bends in this trucker knot going around here, I've actually done running multiple bends on this part of the knot here, doing several of those. And
like you said, you could break pallets,
no, that I broke a limb off a tree.
Sure.
Just running, showing the kid, this I pulled on you, snap, and crud.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is basically a block and tackle without the block and tackle.
That's exactly what it is,
And that's why the truckers use it.
So these 6 knots that they're right there, you can literally do pretty much anything you ever needed to do with knots with that. The only one that I would throw in there as an addition to learn is your alpine butterfly. That has been such a crucial and critical knot for me to know my whole, like, I've used that knot. I honestly, there's no counting how many times I've used that knot successfully to help me along with these additional knots that you've got in the on the page right there. So those are extremely useful knots, and if you master those 5 or 6, like, cool, you're ahead of the majority of America that only ties overhand knots to cinch stuff down.
Yeah. All right. So I just started typing alpine, and there it is, butterfly knot. Boom. And there's videos on how to tie it.
Yep. That's one, like, if you know how to tie a clove hitch, an alpine butterfly, and a bowline, and a square knot, you're good to go.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if is how nationwide REI is, but I know in California they're all over the place, like Home Depot. They got all the climbing stuff and everything there. Every REI I've ever seen has a climbing wall inside of it.
Yep.
So
I unfortunately have boycotted REI.
Yeah, the one in Concord kind of ticked me off too.
their political stance on Second Amendment is what caused me to boycott them. So
Yeah. But anyways, yeah. So, but they do have some good information when it
they
comes to
do,
climbing.
absolutely. They've got good equipment too. Like, I wish I could go into an REI now, but I can't. I got to go. But I like to support my local mom and pop shops. So
Yeah.
like I'll drive an extra 30 miles and spend an extra $10 to support mom and pop versus going to a corporate sellout. So, but I'm weird
Alrighty.
like that. So.
Okay, guys. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up here. Tomorrow night, Wednesday night, is a special Wednesday night for Southern Ohio prepping. He has Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy back again.
Oh, Dr. Bones, huh?
Yeah.
Nice.
So they got a big. I got a preview of their PowerPoint the previous week, but they got a really good thing coming out now that he's going to be going over. It's really good. He's starting it early at a half an hour earlier than normal, so that's going to be 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, 9 Eastern. And so they're planning on being there for, I think, the full 2 hours. So it's they're going over some really good information, and they're putting excuse me, they're shedding light on a lot of the fear porn coming out on the coronavirus. So you got a doctor and a nurse out there who are been digging stuff up and showing you and using their experience to tell you what is and is not true about what we've been hearing about the coronavirus from a lot of channels.
Now, while I understand the importance of being prepared for pandemic stuff like that, is anyone else here just done and sick of hearing the news of like 5 people in the country having it, them calling it a national emergency? Like,
Yeah.
I'm done with it. Like I get, it's going to suck if it does go, viral and become what we fear that it is, but
Well, one of my job was as the emergency management coordinator for Homeland Security was to write up the emergency response tactical plans for pandemics and stuff like that for Homeland Security and its employees. And I tell you, not to make everybody fear, this is just information. I am bothered by the misinformation coming out of China. That's what bothers me. And a lot of other people have said the numbers aren't matching up with what they're doing. And then we also found out that they are underreporting deaths by calling on the death certificate, oh, this is pneumonia. Well, no, it was caused by the virus which brought on pneumonia.
Sure, yeah. I mean, pneumonia is like the 5th leading cause of death in America, but it usually doesn't happen until after you've gotten the flu or any other sort of respiratory bug that then kicks off pneumonia.
Yeah. And or they say some of they were marking it down as asthma, acute asthma, attacks or something. And it's like, yeah. So that's some of the stuff, but anyways, that's my pet peeve is that the numbers coming out don't match the what's being reported. And now all of a sudden the reporting, you notice how it's been skyrocketing over the last 2-3 days. Now they're up to over 20,000 confirmed cases in China. So anyways,
it'll be interesting to see it tomorrow. So
yeah, and he'll be talking about basic simple things you do about the safety masks and stuff. If it does get to that point, and they'll be reiterating if, not when, if the roll of the dice goes weird and something does happen. So you know how to do stuff. Knowledge is power. Just because you know something doesn't mean you have to do it. It means you're ready to do it if you need to do it. He said, "Gunslinger." Oh, yeah. All right. Okay. Ooh. a boat quarantine in Japan. Yeah. All right. All right, guys. That's it. See you tomorrow night over on Southern Ohio Prepping's channel. Hope everybody can make it. And as always, stay happy, stay safe, stay prepared.
And a pleasure, guys.
And